Coming up today, no progress in talks over a wage hike for North Korean workers at the Peruvian K-pop industrial park. North Korea is set to charge South Korean firms a controversial late payment fee as a result. In Peru, on the second leg of her South America tour, President Park Geun-hye thanks Korean residents for their efforts to boost Korea's reputation in the country. She also meets with thousands of Peruvian K-pop fans. Plus, up to 700 people are feared to have drowned after a boat filled with migrants capsized in the Mediterranean Sea. Stay tuned for these stories and more. Hello, it's noon on Monday, the 20th of April. You're tuned in to our midday newscast here on Arirang TV. Thanks, as always, for joining us. I'm Mark Broome. Our top story this afternoon, inter-Korean talks to resolve the ongoing row over raising wages for North Korean workers at their joint industrial park in the north ended in vain on Sunday. South Korean companies with operations at the complex now face the prospect of having to pay the North a controversial late payment fee from today. Ji Myung-gil starts us off.
South Korea's Kaesong business owners are stuck in a dilemma. On the one hand, they're facing the prospect of having to pay a late fee if they don't comply with the North's demand for a wage hike. But on the other hand, they face the possibility of punitive measures from the South if they do. None of the 124 South Korean companies have paid the March wages yet, which are due April 20th. North Korea has threatened to impose a late fee of 15% per month if the South Korean companies don't issue the wage payments on time. South Korea says it will not accept the North's unilateral demand for a wage hike, saying Pyongyang violated a 2004 agreement that calls for two quasi-governmental committees to set the pay rate together. The two committees met for a second time on Saturday, but failed to reach a compromise. In addition, Seoul has warned the South Korean companies operating in the complex that they will face punitive measures if they concede to the North's wage hike demands. The two Koreas have been at odds over the issue since February, when the North unilaterally decided to raise the wage level by more than 5% to roughly $74 a month starting in March for the approximately 53,000 North Korean workers in the complex. Seoul's Unification Ministry says it is still sending messages to Pyongyang, asking to meet on the wage issue, but the North maintains that it's a matter for Pyongyang to decide. Ji Myung-gil, Arirang News.
Continuing her diplomatic tour of South America, President Park Geun-hye spent her second day in Peru, meeting Koreans who live in that country. She also had the opportunity to meet with some Peruvian K-pop fans. Our Chae-san reports from Lima.
Referring to the dozen or so Koreans who first settled in Peru 40 years ago, President Park Geun-hye praised the current 1,300-member Korean community for their hard work and endless efforts to succeed in Peruvian society. For the past 2 decades, many of the Koreans who live here have offered free medical services to Peru's underprivileged. President Park said she was proud of their volunteerism as it not only enhances the reputation of the Korean community in Peru, but also that of Korea. The Korean leader then promised to continue to provide them with targeted support to help them live so far away from home. With Peruvians' increased interest in Korea, mainly due to an expansion of Korean pop culture, the president asked the residents to become Korea's civilian ambassadors and further promote Korean culture. It's estimated there are as many as 5,000 K-pop fans in Peru, and 14 of them got a chance to meet President Park and deliver personal gifts, including a llama doll and a silver brooch. She thanked the fans and said their adoration for Korea will help the two countries become closer. President Park, who had just come from a visit to an archaeological museum, also praised the sophistication of the preservation techniques used for the artifacts. On Monday, President Park will discuss expanding bilateral cooperation to cover infrastructure, healthcare, and defense with Peruvian President Ollanta Humala. There's also speculation whether her latest visit will pave the way for Korea to export its combat aircraft to Peru. Choi Yu-sun, Arirang News, Lima.
Korea's third largest conglomerate SK Group has announced the merger of SK Holdings and its IT services arm SK C&C. Now, SK C&C, which is the de facto holding company of SK Group, will acquire SK Holdings by August 1st. In a statement, the group said SK C&C's resources and technologies are anticipated to lead the group's future growth. The merger will likely strengthen SK Group Chairman Choi Tae-won's control over the group's affiliates, as Choi and his relatives hold more than a 40% stake in SK C&C, and SK Holdings owns a quarter of SK Telecom. SK's merger follows Samsung's move last year to merge its holdings company Jail Industries and its IT services arm Samsung SDI. Corporate debt is becoming a bigger concern for Korea, and figures released today show the country's high ratio of corporate debt to GDP puts it in 7th out of key advanced countries. Kwon So-ah reports.
Public debt, household debt, and now corporate debt are raising concerns in Korea. A parliamentary report released Monday shows Korea's ratio of corporate debt to GDP in the second quarter of last year was the 7th highest among 15 key OECD member countries at 105%. Ireland was number 1 at almost 190%, followed by Sweden at more than 160% and Belgium at 130%. In comparison, the figure for Korea might not seem that high. But considering that corporate debt accounted for nearly 20% of the national debt to GDP increase of 45 percentage points since the global financial crisis in 2007, Korea stands in 3rd behind Ireland and Sweden. Data from Korea's central bank backs up the concerns about the rising debt. It shows the nation's corporate debt rose more than 18% from 2011 to 2014, amounting to roughly $1,400 billion. More than 80% of that debt was held by private companies. Another notable factor is that pension liabilities were not included in Monday's data, but OECD statistics show that if employee pensions and severance payments were included, Korea's corporate debt to GDP ratio in that category would be the 9th highest among 26 advanced countries. New Politics Alliance for Democracy lawmaker Oh Jae-se, who requested the recent data, says the mounting government debt is impacting the private sector, adding that a debt-centered management of the nation's economy will have serious effects on future development. Kwon So-ah, Arirang News.
The amount of electricity produced from nuclear power plants in Korea has surpassed 3 trillion kilowatt hours. The state-run Korea Hydro and Nuclear Power Company said it reached the 3 trillion mark at around 1 a.m. on Monday Korea time. The country began its first commercial operation with the Gori nuclear power plant in the southeastern port city of Busan in 1978. 3 trillion kilowatt hours is equivalent to the amount of electricity that the entire country consumes in 6 years and 3 months, and what the entire global population uses in roughly 6 weeks. Currently, Korea has a total of 23 nuclear reactors in operation and plans to double its nuclear capacity over the next 2 decades. A thick cloud of smoggy fine dust that's been blurring the Seoul skyline is becoming increasingly hazardous and deadly to residents in the region. A study published in the Korean Journal of Occupational and Environmental Medicine on Monday says that more than 15,000 adults in Seoul and its surrounding Gyeonggi-do province died in 2010 because of air pollution, with fine dust being the main culprit. This is about 15% of the total number of adults who died during the same period. Adults were also hospitalized for lung cancer and cardiovascular and respiratory diseases. The study warned that more than 25,000 people could die from air pollution-linked diseases in 2024 if no steps are taken to curb it. Now, it's being dubbed the worst migrant ship disaster ever. A tiny boat carrying what's thought to be at least 700 people capsized somewhere between the Libyan coast and the Italian island of Lampedusa. Pope Francis has called on the international community to act decisively and promptly to prevent a similar incident happening again. Our Son Jung-in has more.
It was late Saturday night local time when a vessel packed full of migrants sank 100 kilometers off the Libyan coast while heading to the Mediterranean island of Malta. The precise death toll remains unknown, but survivors say anywhere between 700 to 950 people were estimated to have been on board. The Italian Coast Guard says a major search and rescue operation is ongoing, but only 50 people have been pulled from the water alive.
It's a possibility that we'll get up to something close to 450 deaths just this week, in which has been an extraordinary period of traffic from North Africa and specifically Libya to the Italian waters.
Local media presumes the accident occurred when the 20-meter-long vessel, far exceeding its weight capacity, tilted to one side when those on board moved to the edge as they saw a large merchant ship approaching the boat. This latest sinking follows a string of similar disasters in recent years. Last week, 400 migrants were presumed to have drowned when a boat attempting to reach Italy capsized off Libya. A few days later, 20 migrants were rescued when they were found drifting in the Mediterranean Sea. Despite the obvious dangers, more and more migrants are opting to attempt a treacherous journey to escape from war and persecution and seek a better life in Europe. The disaster has prompted European officials and Pope Francis to call for urgent action to cope with the rapidly mounting numbers of desperate people making journeys across the Mediterranean Sea. Son Jung-in, Arirang News.
A shocking new video purportedly released by the group that calls itself Islamic State claims to show its militants slaughtering around 30 Ethiopian Christians in Libya. A militant speaking in the 29-minute-long video portrays Christians as crusaders out to kill Muslims. The video shows about 15 men being beheaded on a beach and another group of the same size being shot in the back of their heads in some scrubland. Ethiopia says it's unable to confirm whether its citizens have been killed by the militant group, but condemned the murders as an atrocious act. The killings were similar to past violence carried out by the IS group, which has expanded its reach from Iraq and Syria to chaos-ridden Libya. Korean scientists have created a promising new tool for detecting cancer. It's an advancement on a common procedure, the endoscopy. That's where a doctor inserts a camera attached to a long, flexible tube into a body cavity. Now, this new system eliminates a few steps in cancer diagnosis. Our Park Geun-hye has a story.
This probe, made of optical fibers, is scanning a suspicious lesion inside a patient's body. Suddenly, cancer cells appear on the screen. Unlike conventional endoscopes, this new probe attachment developed by a team of scientists from Seoul National University can identify different types of cancer. Doctors can catch cancer in its early stages by closely analyzing molecules such as protein or DNA. But for an accurate diagnosis, they have to be able to see the complete set of molecules that make up different types of cancer.
The endoscopic system was recently equipped with fluorescent signals, but we could only examine one molecule at a time. Now the new technology allows us to not only identify the location of the molecule in the body, but see multiple molecules at once.
To find a tumor, the probe releases nanoparticles, which attach to cancer cells, directly on the surface of a suspicious area. It uses advanced fluorescence and electromagnetic technology to track, take images of, and identify the cancer cells. The small device inserts easily into any conventional endoscope. This means doctors will be able to detect early-stage cancer during routine endoscopic procedures. The team's work was published in the journal Scientific Reports, and the scientists are working with local hospitals and manufacturers to prepare the device for clinical use. Park Geun-hye, Arirang News.
Now, the demand for military and civilian drones is soaring. The ability of these drones to conduct tasks that might be too dangerous for a manned aircraft to undertake is a big reason behind their increasing popularity. Korea recently stepped into the market as well with its own prototype that hopes to be ready by 2023. Our Lee Ju-young has more.
This unmanned tilt-rotor drone is able to take off and land vertically like a helicopter while flying like an airplane. Able to stay up in the air for up to 6 hours, the TR-60 can reach speeds of up to 500 kilometers an hour, making it the fastest of its kind in the world. Costing more than $90 million, the Korea Aerospace Research Institute says it plans to complete development of the TR-60 by 2023 and begin mass production the following year. Designed to operate in the stratosphere, the TR-60 can be used for surveillance, search and rescue, aerial reconnaissance, transportation, and communication relays.
Korea's current drone technology is set to be the 7th best in the world, but by 2023, we aim to be in the top 5 and climb to 3rd or 4th by 2027.
Aerospace market analysis firm Teal Group says the global drone market was estimated at $5.3 billion last year, but industry analysts expect it to more than double in less than a decade. Korea's drone market is also projected to expand quickly, growing more than 20% a year and reaching well over $500 million by 2022. But with global tech giants like Google and Facebook jumping into the market, Korea is expected to face some stiff competition in the years to come. Lee Ju-young, Arirang News.
Well, that's all we have for now. I'm Mark Broome. Have a wonderful day and thanks as always for watching. And we do hope to see you at the same time tomorrow. Goodbye.